If you have ever felt rejected or thwarted, or if in fact you're experiencing that right now, today I want to share with you some hope. I have some Irish proverbs and sayings for you, and I also want to share with you a personal story in which I was rejected not once, but 3 times, and what happened because of that. I want to share these things to light the fire of perseverance in you and to also encourage you to become the storyteller-in-chief in your own life. So thank you for being here. I'm just delighted that we're together. Fáilte Umcree, welcome from my heart. My name is Kate, if this is your first time joining us. I'm, like you, a multi-passionate creator, and I'm also a professor of Irish language and folklore. And I like the way that creativity and Irish tradition come together to help us live joyfully and creatively. So I'm delighted we're together. Well, let me tell you the story. I don't come of people that apply to the Ivy League. My father was a fisherman and my mother was a nurse, but I had and still have a great passion for studying Irish language and folklore. And I knew that in the United States, the one place really that was offering what I wanted to learn was Harvard University. And so at the end of my undergraduate year, I applied. And not surprisingly, I was rejected. Okay, fair enough. I was rejected. So I actually went over to Harvard and I happened to meet one of the faculty members. And he said, here's my advice. Don't just go be a waitress. No offense to waitresses, but he said, show us that you're really committed and go do something related to the field. So I took the last of my savings and I went to Wales, to Swansea, Wales, to the university, and I studied Welsh mythology and Welsh language. And I applied again, and I was rejected again. Well, there wasn't much to do at that point, but I went to get a job. In Portland, Maine, I went to work in a bookstore. And that was a sort of a year of feeling a little bit adrift because I knew at the time, I really wanted to get studying. I was eager to have this experience and to be able to attend Harvard and learn the things I wanted to learn, but I was rejected. So I spent that year working. I spent that year writing poetry. In fact, I started a little poetry journal at the bookstore. And I also was active in the music community and in fact won a little prize in a song contest. But I also knew that I was not where I needed to be just yet. And there was some frustration in that. I was trying to do the best I could and I applied again and I was rejected again. That was the 3rd time. And Harvard, at least in those days, had a policy that if you were rejected 3 times, that was the end of the road. And so I remember very clearly taking all of the materials, all of the brochures and application materials, and throwing them in the dumpster and saying, okay, well, what's next? And I didn't have a very clear idea, though I did apply to Oxford University. And I was thinking about some other things. I was interested, in fact, in music at that time, very much. And what happened was a little bit of a miracle. One night I came home and I had 2 calls on my answering machine. One of them was from a local music agent, and he had heard me in the song contest, and that was the first message. He said, I'd like to represent you, please call me, and we could talk about that. And the second call was from Professor Patrick K. Ford of Harvard University, the Celtic Languages and Literatures Department, and he said, we have a space for you, and we'd like to invite you to come. And that night, it felt like my life was going in 2 different directions, but I decided that yes, this great desire I had to study Irish language and folklore, that I would do that. And so I did. And so I went to Harvard, and what I want you to know most about this story is that those 3 rejections and that sense of delay and being thwarted actually served me tremendously. Because when I got there, I was 1,000% in. I was 100%, 1000% committed. It really was rocket fuel. I decided I wasn't going to waste a minute. I wasn't going to waste an opportunity. And so any extra lecture that they had, I was there. Things I didn't even know what they were. I attended those lectures and learned, and it really served me. I think when you decide that you are all in with something is when you really learn the most. And I did. I learned so much. And it changed my life, I think, those rejections. I think, for one thing, it gave me this great sense of clarity and commitment. But for another thing, because I worked so hard, because I was so committed and devoted, I learned in a way, I learned so deeply. I took what I was learning deep into my heart and mind and soul. And my life in the 30 plus years, almost 35 years since then, has been marked by that commitment and devotion that grew out of rejection. So what I'm taking and what I want to give you today are 3 lessons from that one little story. And again, our touchstone, as always, is Irish tradition. The first of them is Buanseasmhacht, which means perseverance. What I want to tell you about that word actually means steadfast standing. It means standing truly steadfast for that thing that you want to create or experience. Now, in my story, when I hit a roadblock, I had to do something different. And I know that's true of all of us. But somehow to take a step forward, even as we are standing true in that desire, okay, I can't do this, but I can do this. That kept me going forward. If I could go back and talk to that long ago Kate, who, especially in that year of working in the bookstore, felt really a little bit adrift and unsure if it was going to all come together, I would say to her, and I would say to you, if you're experiencing this now, see the dignity in your effort. Stand up for yourself. Praise your smallest effort and your smallest devotion. Don't lose heart. That's the main thing I would say. And I say it to you, I say it to me, to all of us. Don't lose heart. Don't lose heart. Keep going. A proverb I like is maith tirálaí BUAN. God loves a slogger. Isn't that wonderful? So tirálaí is a grinder or a slogger, one who keeps going. And there's that word BUAN, which is steadfast or steady. So be steadfast in your desire to create what you're wanting to create. And if you're hung up on God, you can just say life. That leads me to my next point, which is that there is always a reward, even in the rejection. And let's be committed to finding it. A proverb that guides me all the time, Mair a chapel is yoi too fair. Live horse and you will get grass. Something good will come from this. As I said, in my case, it was clarity and commitment and rocket fuel. But it might be insight. It might be self-knowledge. It might be, I thought this really was the thing, but actually it's not quite the thing. It's a little bit different. Or I want to try something, this was an experiment and I want to try something different. There's always a reward, and let's be committed to looking for it. Finally, I want to say, let's know the difference between big stories and little stories. The word for story in Irish is scale, and scale covers the gamut from chat to epic to big episodic myths. So to be a scéalaí is a person who understands the relationships between different kinds of stories. There are little stories, and I would say that a rejection is a little story. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't feel big, but hear me out. What I mean is, a rejection is one story that is part of the bigger story. The big story is who you are, who you're becoming, and the life you are actively creating for yourself. That's the big story. So my encouragement here is that we transform rejections, failures, challenges into episodes or little stories within the big story. Because when you're committed to the big story, you are the storyteller. You're in charge. And because you're the storyteller, you can keep telling the story. It's not over until you say it's over. I love to remember that a rejection is a rejection of, say, an application. Or in my life, I'm rejected on the regular, just to say. Getting that one acceptance opened up all kinds of opportunities for me, but it wasn't the end of the story. When I went to Harvard, I had to contend with my own sense of inferiority, to be quite honest. I knew I was a blue-collar kid coming into a white-collar world. I found that challenging. Not that the people were challenging, my ideas about myself needed to change. So when I say rejection, all of us, it is a poem or an application or an attempt that is rejected. The only one who can really reject us, the person, the poet, the creator, the scholar, is us. And we do that when we stop. And when we stop telling the story that we want to create. So I hope that's helpful to you today. I hope you will commit to being the scaly, the storyteller in your own life. And to being Buanseasmhacht, perseverant, long-standing, steady. So please, if you are inspired, please like this video as ever. I'd love it if you'd subscribe. I'd love it if you'd share it with someone who needs some encouragement. That would be wonderful. And I'd like to ask you, what is a story of rejection that you would like to transform into an episode? Basically, turning what feels like a big story into a small story. And also, finally, how can you give grace to yourself right now if you're experiencing some kind of challenge or rejection? Or how would you give grace to that long ago self or that past self? What would you tell that self? I think we have a lot of wisdom to share, and I would love to hear yours. Thank you, as ever, for watching. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for being part of this loving, intelligent, creative community. I'm so happy we're together. And I am wishing you a week of being the storyteller-in-chief of your own life. I'll see you next week.